Can you believe it's Saturday already? I am amazed at how fast these weeks are going. It was just New Year's, it seems like, just a few months ago, and now we're halfway through the year, into the second portion of the year. And every day goes by so fast. I get so busy with what I'm doing and writing and advising clients and trying to settle some disputes when they come up. And every day I look forward to getting up and getting going because I know that something new is going to happen that day. And that's part of a good life, right? Diversity in what you're doing throughout the day. That's what makes time pass quickly. I was thinking last night about an experience, and it was one of those burning bush moments, when Moses was out there in the desert and this bush began to burn, and then it began to talk to him and tell him what that bush told him what was expected of him. And Moses had to make some decisions right then and there and do what the burning bush told him. And I think that so much in our lives we get these messages, right? We get these messages that say, no, you better not do that. Oh, you know what? You should probably do that. You should probably talk to that person. It just pops up in the middle of nowhere. I was flying one time from the East Coast to the West Coast. In fact, it was from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, California. And it was a packed flight, except for my seat. For some reason, the seat next to me was still vacant. But all the other seats were taken up. The two seats in front of me was occupied by a lady who you could tell that she thought she was somebody. Perfect hair, perfect grooming, perfect everything on her. And a man sat down in the next seat to her. Long hair, unshaven, agitated, kept asking the stewardess questions. He wanted to talk to the lady in the pompous lady next door. And she wouldn't talk with him. In fact, she got so agitated that she called the flight attendant and said, "You got to move this guy. He's just driving me nuts." In fact, she walked up to the front of the plane and asked for him to be removed. So the stewardess said, "I'm going to place this individual right next to you. Is that okay?" I said, "That's fine. Go ahead, do it." So the guy moved back to the seat next to me. And you could tell that he was agitated. His hands were moving, his legs were moving in this nervous shakiness. He wanted to have more drinks because he was just so agitated. And he said, "I don't think that lady likes me. She wanted me moved." I said, "That's okay, don't worry about it." I said, 3 words, "What's your story?" And he looked at me. And all of a sudden, he just sighed, a big sigh. Sat back in his chair. And he began to tell me his story. "What's your story?" "Well, I got a story back." And he told me why he was so upset. It's because his father had just passed away. He had to sign the papers to go ahead and pull the plug. And he hadn't seen his father in several years. He lived in Los Angeles and the father lived back in the Washington, D.C. area. And he began to tell the story of how they had lost communication, how they had gotten angry at each other. He had moved to Los Angeles, worked in the film industry, ran the cameras on major motion pictures. And he even sold cameras, the big motion picture that made movies, that made everybody else's life seem beautiful and wonderful. the cameras that looked at the world in a different view. And my seatmate had a whole different life. And he told me about the experience of having to talk to the doctors and having to make that decision without his brothers or sisters being there to guide him. He had to make that decision so his father would not suffer any longer. And it weighed heavily upon him. And the father finally died. Now it's funny because a couple months before, I had lost my mom. I was the sole administrator. I had to make that decision to let my mom peacefully drift off and go to sleep. So I knew what he was going through. I knew that he was in pain. I knew that it was a big decision that he had to make. For me, it wasn't that bad of a decision because my mom and I had talked about it several months before as we were redoing her will and making sure that her life, the quality of life when she did have to go to the hospital, would be taken care of. And both she and I knew what she wanted done. So I followed what she wanted. So knowing what she wanted was a big burden off of me. But still you have those thoughts that go through your mind, right? Well, this individual had lost contact with his father, and he had the responsibility, after not seeing his father for so long, to pull that plug so he would not be in pain any longer. And so he did. And it bothered him terribly because now he had to administer the will and the trust and everything else that was set up. And he didn't know if he had the capability of doing it. So there's a story of why he was feeling that way as he was on that plane ride from the East Coast to the West Coast, and why, for some reason, he was sat next to me so that we could listen, so I could listen to his story, guide him along the way. So we talked, and he was trying to order more booze, more liquor, but he had gone to his limit. And he said, "Can you order me something?" I said, "No." He said, that's okay, that's fine." I said, "No, I'm not going to order you anything because I think that what you really need is to sit back, close your eyes, and just sleep. Because you're worn out. You're mentally fatigued." He says, "Yeah, I think you're right." And so he laid back, went to sleep, and he slept all the way from, I don't know where we were, in the middle of the world someplace, in the middle of the United States someplace. And he slept all the way until we touched ground in Los Angeles. Now you see, that grumpy old lady that he was sitting next to could have said, "Hey, what's your story?" And she would have learned a whole new different story. But she didn't want to. She didn't want to hear about anybody else's problems. She was into herself. She really loved herself. She didn't want anybody sitting next to her that was going to be different than her. But sometimes there are people that are different than us, right? And sometimes when we just ask a very simple question, "Hey, what's your story?" And then they begin to talk. And the more that they talk, the better that they feel. The more that they talk, the more confident they feel. The more that they talk, they can think things through. And sometimes all you have to do is listen. So simple. Such a simple part of our life is just to listen. Landed in Los Angeles. He turned to me and he shook my hand and he said, "Thanks." And I said, "No problem." And he went on his own. And he sped through that airport. I couldn't even catch up with him. But he had enough energy that he sped through that airport, went out, got his luggage, and got into a car and drove off. Not needing another drink. Not needing another anxiety attack. Nothing. There are times when people need to tell their story, need to get that pain out, need to get that frustration out. And sometimes all that you have to do is just sit there and say, yes, yes, okay, and then what? The more that you ask, the simple questions that you ask, I should say, gets them to that next step, that next level. You see, when you're sad and down, and right now we have a lot of people in the United States that are sad and they're down. They're trying to make it through every single day because their money is running out, their credit is running out, their food is running out. So they're frustrated. And these people, including myself sometimes, need people to talk to. You can't be stuffed up in a room someplace all your life. You've got to get out there. You've got to mingle. You've got to be able to start your life again. And if you have a problem, don't hesitate to talk to someone about that problem. If you get it out, you feel better. Maybe not 100% better, but you feel better. You get a little bit more confidence that you say, you know what, I can make it through one more day. I can make it through one more week, a month, a year, 2 years. I know that the financial bad times are not going to last forever. It's just an event in our life, right? All of these negative downturns are just an event. They don't last forever and ever. Even though this inflationary period is lasting a lot longer than we thought it was going to last, we can still make it through. Because we have the ability to take control of our lives and plan, build, budget, save, scrimp, and at the same time still have a good time in life. Because there's a lot of things that you can go out, like a nice walk in the afternoon, or a nice walk on a Saturday, or a nice walk on a Sunday, or even going to a church and listening to the good music. Sometimes the words aren't all that great, but I tell you, the music does a lot for you. I tell you, there are some nights I'm done with the day. I've had a busy day, and I sit down and I turn on the music and I hear the music, and I feel good. So listen, if you are next to someone at any time, or if you know of a friend that needs to talk, or if you are just in the right place at the right time where somebody needs to vent or get something off their chest or let their sadness out, let them. Don't make fun of them. Don't put them down. There's a reason why you're there at that moment, at that time. Just think about it. Listen, if you have any business questions, remember I do a business podcast, so I went off track today, but anyway, I do a business podcast. If you have any business questions, or if you just have a question about life in general, send it to thebusinessadvisor@gmail.com. And if you would like to sit down and have a session with me on business or HR or management, whatever you want to talk about, I'm here. I talk, and everything you tell me is confidential. So you can do that by going to www.lodge.co.com. The links are down below. Everybody, go out and have a great Saturday. Remember, you're there for a purpose. Always. Talk with you soon. Bye-bye.